Aloha, what's up everybody? Welcome to today's presentation, which is going to be on H.P. Lovecraft. Actually, it's more like things that are inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. And where does this information come from? Don't worry if you don't know who H.P. Lovecraft is, I'll explain it as we go. But it's good to see everybody in the chat. If you like my work, feel free to visit me over on Patreon or on my very own website, JayDreamerZ.com. All right, sweet. So today we're going to be talking about cosmic horror. Lovecraft, strange monsters, weird things, and the truth, of course, as to how they could possibly be real. So let me get some pictures pulled up here, and I'm going to do some screen sharing with you guys. Let's see. Fopow. Is that it? That's not it. All right, one second. Screen capture? Oh. That's everybody there. I had it up here a minute ago. Media file? Nope. This one? Nope. Oh boy. All right, hold on. 1 second. Sorry. Let's do this one. Poopum and fopow. That should work right there. And I'll just get it pulled back here to the beginning. All right, sweet. H.P. Lovecraft is a famed author that basically wrote really weird, strange stories, right? He's got really odd characters associated with a lot of tentacles and things like that. You're going to see a lot of these images are the types of creatures that birthed from his very own mind. Many of these creatures that he created in his horror novels, and this is well over 100 years ago that he started writing. They can't really be described. You know, people have attempted to try to cartoonify them, to make characters out of them or whatever, but many of them are shapeshifters. They're strange and they're weird. They're what he refers to as like a type of elder gods or old ones, right? Ancient creatures. What this implies is that mankind, all of us in the modern world, have forgotten about it, that they actually do exist, that they really are real. And you're going to see a lot of videos like this one behind me right now. That's the movie The Color Out of Space, that have been inspired by his work, right? So I want to talk about these strange creatures and how they made their way into our very real life. For example, in petroglyphs, right? People see monsters and weird things and they don't know how to interpret it. Sometimes they look sort of humanoid. They might have arms or what appears to be legs or strange heads, many eyes or one eye or sometimes no eyes. The truth to this is very simple for me personally, right? I didn't know Lovecraft. I was born after his time. And what I can say is that just by learning from all of the other authors, by reading their works, by watching movies, by perusing novels and checking out things, I can see the truth behind what they're talking about. They're talking about plasma. They're talking about otherworldly creatures. They're talking about humanoids that come up from within the earth. They're talking about radiation and mutations and all of the things that we consider to be elements of modern day horror or even cosmic horror, right? Cosmic horror is oftentimes some strange creature that comes down from above. But let's go over some of these pictures here. So I'm going to comment on all of these pictures and we're going to make some connections with Lovecraft as we go. Okay, so a lot of these cosmic creatures, they have like plasma looking arms or a lot of tentacle symbolism. Anytime you see the tentacle symbolism, it's always going to represent plasma for the most part, right? Of course, there are oceanic creatures that have tentacles and stuff, and they say that there's oceans above as well. So these creatures from above drop down, they come through the firmament when it opens up, and they have to pass through the waters above as well. So we've got otherworldly creatures, but we also have just pure energy that is wrapped around our world. And that pure energy can give off radiation. It can give off gamma rays and things that will mutate the human genome and change people. And there's different gases that are introduced both from above and below that can give people boils and bumps, and many of you are familiar with the gases that they use in wartime and what that does to people, making them cry more, making them lose their sensation of feeling, making them laugh depending on what types of gases it is. And these events have already happened. All of the things that you all consider to be horror of any type are real, actual things that have happened in our history, and that's why we are drawn to them. That's why they actually do scare us. If there was no such thing as a wolf man, right? Or a lichen, or what do you call them? Bigfoot and all that type of stuff. If there really was no such thing, there would be nothing to be afraid of at all. It would be ridiculous. It'd probably be more comical. It would be more comedy. But if something like this creature, this spider-looking Phanazoid weird thingy right here, really exists, then that's scary. There's a possibility I could meet that thing one day. You know what I mean? All of these things are rooted in reality. This particular one comes from an episode of Black Mirror called Beyond the Aquila Rift. And the man thinks that it's a woman at first until it comes in from the shadows, and then he sees it's what I call a Phantazoid, which is basically an alien creature that comes into our world from above or up into our world from below. These right here, I actually want to talk about these. So you see these light pillars? You may see these whenever it's kind of foggy or misty outside. You'll see pillars of light that rise up. Now, depending on the conditions, they'll actually create this shape. You see this right here? Let me zoom in on this. You see how they make these arches as they go up? They fan out at the top, like they're spreading wings or something up at the top. See, here's another example right here behind me. See how it makes that sort of mitre or Pope's hat? Listen to this. I'm gonna put this on pause for just a second, the slideshow that I've got going on here, because I want to read a poem by H.P. Lovecraft. This is a very interesting poem. And for those of you who follow my information, when I talk about the Garden of Eden and the plasma sheath that surrounds it and protects it, and this sort of dome of energy that's constantly chasing its own tail, Ouroboros style, and the pillars of light that shoot up into the skies, and all of these types of symbolic imagery, you'll hear that in this poem. This poem is called Providence. Now, Providence, one could make the case, well, that's the town where he grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, or whatever. I get that. But as with so many aspects of our media, there's a double meaning, right? Providence is something that is supernaturally protected by God, right? Or by what someone might consider to be God or a God, right? The ultimate place of protection in our world is the Garden of Eden. So, Providence by H.P. Lovecraft. Where bay and river tranquil blend, and leafy hillsides rise, the spires of Providence ascend against the ancient skies. Now, I gotta break this down real quick, okay? Actually, let me put it on screen for you guys, because, listen, there's a danger to not getting the deeper message when it comes to lyrics in a song or poetry. It's because of the cadence and the beat and stuff. It distracts us from what's being said. It's hard. It's beautiful, but it's distracting. We can't actually grasp what is being said because of that cadence. So what I would like to do is put this on screen for everybody. That way you can see it and read it right along with me. So let me get this put up here. One moment. Maybe 2 moments. Here we go. All right, cool. Now, we'll go right here. Okay, cool. All right, here is the lyrics to this poem by H.P. Lovecraft. And I'll make it a little bigger too. All right, cool. As you can see, it says, where bay and river tranquil blend. Hold on, let me get something else pulled up here. We're going to go with Mercator, map of the Arctic. Oh, boy. There we go. All right, cool. I want to show you where he's talking about, basically. All right, here we go. All right, now he goes on to say in his poem, where bay and tranquil and river tranquil blend. So there's a bay and a blending of rivers together. That's what this place has right here. This is the circular island at the Arctic. This is a map by Gerard Mercator, right? This is the bay in the middle area. These are the rivers where they blend. This is the Garden of Eden. He's describing it to you. And leafy hillsides rise. So all of the hillsides are all the way around this valley paradise, right? These are the walls of Eden. The spires of Providence ascend. So all the way around here, we have, in this area, this Arctic region, we have plasma volcanoes or regular volcanoes. But in the time to come, these are the largest volcanoes on Earth. All right. People don't know about these yet because they haven't risen up to the surface out of the ocean yet, as it says they will in the book of Revelation. But in the time to come, when the inner earth depressurizes all of that abundant amount of gas that it has been building up and holding back through the earth's own electromagnetic field, when that electromagnetic field releases, all those gases rush up and they burst out of the top into spires of light all the way around here in the north, but the largest one being right there in the center. So he says, the spires of Providence ascend against ancient skies. Now, ancient skies is interesting to me too, because he's telling us, he's telling you where we are on the timeline in this poem, where on our own timeline, where are we talking about? Ancient skies, ancient times, or New Year's is coming up right around the corner. Since time's speeding up, it'll be here in like 2 days. But they sing the song Auld Lang Syne, which means from long ago or from ancient times. That's also a reference to the Garden of Eden in the Bible. If you look it up, a lot of people read that it says God placed a garden eastward in Eden. But that's not actually what it says. That word eastward is translated long ago. It was read more as in ancient times. It didn't mean eastward as in an easterly direction. It actually conveyed in ancient times, right? So in ancient times was the Garden of Eden. The spires of Providence ascend against ancient skies. Here centuried domes of shining gold salute the morning's glare, while slanting gables, odd and old, are scattered here and there. So you might ask yourself, what is a slanting gable? These odd-looking, old, slanting gables, and they're scattered here and there. I will show you. Oops. These are those gables, right? So if I pulled up what a gable is, it's on the computer here. It's just going to show you a picture of houses and the wall of the house where it meets the roof, whenever the roof is triangular and comes down like that, right? This is what the walls look like, but it doesn't have to be triangular, right? Like if I look up right now, medieval gables, check this out. Because they had different architecture at the time. All right, sweet. So this is what pops up. This, right? So if we take a look at this, you can start to understand why this type of architecture was used, right? They're following the natural electromagnetic currents that are already there, right? From these geoplasmas that are erupting. And if you made a circle of these all the way around that central island, this is what it would look like. It would look like this huge heavenly coliseum or something at the middle of the world. All right, so he goes on talking about these slanting gables, odd and old, scattered here and there, and in the narrow winding ways that climb over slope and crest, the magic of forgotten days may still be found to rest. It goes on. It keeps on talking about Georgian brick, the sights and sounds of long ago, all these things. He's describing ancient times, antiquity. He's not making it up. He's describing an actual real place. All right, cool. So these are those gables. And this is probably one reason why we emulate the heavenly style, the heavenly architecture. We just copy what we've already seen and what we're already familiar with, and we make little versions of it. Mutations, right, are ripe throughout all of this information that's being given to us in the movies, all of this Lovecraftian type of imagery in books and comic books and all of this stuff, right? Mutations are a part of all of this. During the plasma apocalypse, whenever those otherworldly rays come into our world, like I said, they will change people at a genetic level. They have the ability to change people. So, for example, one genetic mutation you can expect to see, and I believe this is why these particular people seemed to be more prevalent during the Dark Ages. People who can bend. I forgot what that's called, but when you're a very bendy person, you know, you can like turn your head all the way around or put your arms in weird positions and stuff. I forgot what that's called. But that happens whenever the electricity, the electrical field in the atmosphere that's amplified way stronger than it is today, with the exception of the auroras that we just had the other day, which was pretty amazing. But even stronger than that, right? What that ambient electrical field does to your skin is it causes it to produce more elastin. When you have more elastin being produced, you become very stretchy, extremely stretchy, and able, like, almost, you know, double jointed and stuff, right? So you see a lot of that happening. That's one type of mutation, is stretchy skin and being able to stretch, you know, to ridiculous degrees. We also have things like the dog-headed people, the wild men, people just covered in hair, like all over their face, and you get the wolfman symbolism. We've got hunchbacks whose heads are so low that they appear to be in their chest, just like the Blemmies. Cyclopean diseases, people who are born where their legs are fused together. That still happens today, by the way, on occasion, but it happens way more in a world that's irradiated. Then, of course, we've got actual plasma. Tommy knockers knocking at the door, right? Plasma that's attracted to things in people's houses, or even the humans that are there in their own bioelectromagnetic field, right? And so people did things to keep the entities, the tentacles, or whatever it may be, away, right? One of the things that they would do is they would put a horseshoe magnet, which is the strongest type of magnet, two-dimensional magnet that you can create for a shape, is the U shape, or that horseshoe shape. They would put one on their door because the magnet repels plasma, right? This is also why they would leave out food and drink offerings, and this is why they made food and drink offerings to monsters and strange gods that, you know, have tentacles and weird arms and multiple eyeballs and stuff. Because if this is magnetism at work, or plasma, then it feeds off of gas, right? And all of the milk and cookies and things like that, you leave them outside and they start to rot, and they ooze gas up into the air that you can't see, but these things will be attracted to, they'll hover around it and appear to be actually feeding off of it. And therefore they won't go into your house. You're sort of distracting them and redirecting them. Now, a lot of this is also seen today, which is the aurora borealis, which, by the way, some people shared with me their pictures of the auroras. I went out and took some. This is the first time I've ever seen the auroras in my life. I was so stoked. My son got to see them too. It was really great. But these pictures, these still pictures of the auroras, don't do them any justice. I don't think they do them any real justice, because when you see them in real life, it's miraculous. It's otherworldly. I don't know how else to describe it. It's like going to the Grand Canyon. Seeing a picture of the Grand Canyon is way different than actually getting the depth perception and seeing how vast that is, you know? But yeah, the glory of God, the glowing of the skies, the sky being lit up, people seeing electricity literally slithering around in the atmosphere, flipping about, splitting into 2 or 3 or more, disappearing and reappearing in other places, right? This is also ghosts on a small scale way down here. Mermen and stuff like that. Lovecraft talks about these sort of merman type creatures, otherworldly creatures, and I think that there's a lot of truth to that too. Personally, I think that a lot of this might actually be technology that humans are wearing so that they could swim and breathe underwater up there, you know, in Atlantis, basically. It's a possibility. It could also be a mutation as well. There's also the modern day Dogon to consider, right? The Dogon tribe who worship the Nemo, which is really interesting. So the Dogon, the actual word Dogon, means of the fish. Like the word dog in ancient times actually meant fish or dog. So then we got weird, creepy looking monsters and creatures. This is the color out of space again, which I decoded on my Truth in Movies playlist. And you can see the plasma coming down. This is why it's the color out of space. It's usually a magenta color. Purpley, magenta, green, you know, like the aurora type colors. But this particular magenta color comes from ionized hydrogen. So by looking at the colors, right, if we apply a modern scientific method and research and stuff, we can understand what these things actually are instead of saying that's a gigantic octopus tentacle from space hanging off of the face of this circular god in the sky like Medusa or something, right? We can actually be less afraid of it by teaching ourselves what these things symbolize, what they mean, what they are, what they represent in reality, not living in a fantasy horror movie where the reason you're scared is because you have a lack of knowledge. You don't understand these things. You know what I mean? But the more you learn, the more you research, even by going to the movies and asking questions and reading books and stuff, you know, you're learning a lot more about these creatures. Oftentimes they're cartoonified, so they're sort of an amalgam or a chimera type of thing, where they put multiple creatures together, like a lot of teeth and stuff, or a face or whatever. Sometimes they combine actual real creatures and monsters, especially those who have undergone gigantism because of the influx of oxygen in the prior age and the age to come. This is from Marvel movies. This is the Scarlet Witch, right? And she uses this sort of chaos magic or whatever. Anytime that you hear that phrase chaos magic, it is energy that is coming from the heavens or from the sky. It's cosmic magic. It's cosmic horror up there in the heavens coming downwards at us. It usually causes things to go into chaos, right? It just dances around. It doesn't stay in one spot. It's not reliable. It's unpredictable. As opposed to those beams of energy that shoot straight up from within the earth, they're always reliable because they come from a source. They're coming up out of caves and stuff. You also see gigantic insectoid-like creatures and stuff. This is from the movie The Mist. And oftentimes in these horror movies, you'll see them, you know, somebody will get basically impregnated by something like this, or they'll use your body to incubate their larva and stuff. There are actual real insects that do that today. Imagine those insects when gigantism returns to our world. This is also from The Color Out of Space. I just noticed that this sort of meteorite that landed in these people's backyard or front yard or whatever looks kind of like a brain. And we just did a whole video on the brain symbolism, right? The tentacles, the neurons that are in the brain, right? The it. Then we got the Aurora Borealis. Oftentimes kind of looks like it's making a dome. It's actually just perspective from it coming far from one direction and going back into the other direction. It's not actually making a dome, but it looks like it is. So symbolically, there is a dome over the Garden of Eden, or there is a plasma sheath that protects the Garden of Eden. Once those pillars of light return, there'll just be a huge wall of plasma. Oftentimes they'll put other elements, like this one has a goat skull or whatever, right? That's just the cartoonified imagery to let you know that it's, you know, it's got all these tentacles and different arms and stuff like that, right? So what this could be is the plasma above that has mutated an actual goat or even a dead goat, because this can bring things back to life. This is an event that brings the dead back to life, which is why zombies are real. This one's from the movie Annihilation. We also decoded this one. It shows this sort of mutant dead bear looking thing, like a zombie bear. And you'll see a lot of these animals and stuff that are dead, but they come back to life. There's like zombie animals too. That's because that actually happens. The dead come back to life, not just humans, but dead animals as well. You'll also notice from the movie The Mist, where there's religious fanaticism that starts to rise up because people don't know what this is, right? They just say they're powerful, they're gods, expiation, let's feed them, let's keep them away from us, right? Let's offer a sacrifice if we run out of actual food or whatever. Let's give them the least worthy of all of us or whatever. You know, it can lead to those types of things, unfortunately. This is an interesting manuscript from the Middle Ages of records of strange events that people saw in the sky. This one is a night when they saw snakes, fiery serpents, just slithering through the skies. Is it actually, you know, a plague of flying snakes? No, because there's no such thing as a flying snake. There's a gliding snake that falls off of high branches, but that's different, and definitely wouldn't see this many of them. This is a depiction of plasma that's entering into the atmosphere during a time, which was the Dark Ages, when the atmosphere was electrically amplified. Right? So this is another example right here from the mist. You've got these tentacles that sort of reach in and grab this guy, and he's in the fog. The reason that you see a lot of fog symbolism is because the atmosphere depressurizes as the sky opens up, and it instantly creates mist and fog the world across. More also zombie symbolism. This one's from a sweet video game where you go to this sort of otherworldly place where there's all these like Cthulhu-looking creatures or whatever. Anytime you have a character or a creature that has like tentacles or snakes or serpents or anything around its face or as a beard or anything like that, it oftentimes represents the opening in the sky where all of those plasma tentacles are coming into our world. And it looks like a giant face or a shield or some, you know, an ancient sun or something like that with snakes coming off of it, or dragons, or, you know, hair or whatever it may be. Huge plasma tentacles coming down to the ground as they ground themselves. These exist today. You might look at that and go, oh, you know, it's just the movies. But they call this a steve. This is actually what we would call, it's a stupid name, but it's kind of a plasma streamer in the upper atmosphere that reaches thousands and thousands of degrees. It's extremely dangerous, and if one of those steves, which is just a huge arcing arm of electrical current, ever did touch the ground, it would likely petrify things. It would likely blow things up and burn things and disintegrate things. Like, it's very dangerous. And that's just what it would do to people. I've got this imagery here. It's a lot of North Pole looking Aurora Borealis imagery. This is just a thumbnail for the movie The Color Out of Space, but you'll also notice in the foreground is a well or a hole in the ground. Anytime you see the well or the hole in the ground symbolism, that represents the wishing well, which is at the North Pole. It's not an actual well. It's the mountain, which is a volcano, that has an opening that goes all the way down into the hollow recesses of the earth. It's also full of treasure, or precious metals and stuff that are created through chemical processes and electrical processes, because that stone, that black mountain in the middle of the world, is the Philosopher's Stone, and it changes things electrochemically. This is an image. You'll see people where their eyes turn red, right? Or they start glowing with like some kind of pinkish light from the inside, or red light. This is what I call plasma possession. Cthulhu, which is, you know, one of the most well-known of all the characters that Lovecraft came up with, he has many different abilities. All of these ancient ones that he came up with have different abilities. And oftentimes mind control is one of those abilities, right? To make a person, a human being, their thrall or their host, as it's basically possession, okay? So they go in and they sort of use humans and animals and all kinds of stuff as puppets, as they possess them, right? And they are now walking around in their body. I call it plasma possession. It's another example of one of the ancient ones within the Cthulhu mythos or the works of Lovecraft. The story of Lovecraft is really sad. Just so you know, like, he was not some super famous writer. Many of them never are until after they pass away. And he was a visionary. From my perspective, he was able to see the things that I'm constantly teaching you guys every day. And that was over 100 years ago, before plasma physics was even, you know, popularized at all. But anyway, stuff like this is the type of imagery that I would expect to see if the dome opened up and we were to look into the mind of God or the fractal verse beyond. Why? Because there are neural pathways that lead from world to world and plasma conduits that stretch out, and there is a nucleus to all of these cells, basically. It's like we live inside of, you know, a living organism, which has cells. This would be like a neuron, and these would be dendrites that come off of the central portion of the neuron, and it looks just like this, except for this one's slightly cartoonified to look like tentacle eyeball eyeball monster or whatever, right? So these are the ancient ones. These are why they're cosmic horror, because these entities that people see when the sky opens up, what lies beyond and what makes its way into our world, right, are so terrifying to people. Why? Because they have no idea what it is. We've lived most of our entire lives being completely unaware that there is a physical barrier up there that is separating our view, our eyes, from the view of heaven or the cosmos or the Elysian fields or the fractal verse or however you want to see it, right? There's another good example too. I think I actually have a moving version of that, but you'll see like there's like a light in the middle or a one eye symbolism, all the tentacles coming off. We talked about that a lot on the last episode with the brain symbolism. And these people worship this. Okay, there's really two types of people in this world. This is all my personal stuff, so you know, it's fine if you don't agree with me. But there are the types who worship Cthulhu, or the split plasma from above, the plasma that splits and it's not reliable. That's, you know, the one from above, right? Like a Kraken or Hydra type symbolism, right? They worship that. They also worship the opening where it comes from, which is the apex dome, which can be looked at like a shield or whatever. It's got light coming out of it. It's really a primordial type of sun. They worship that. They worship this power that descends from above, okay? And they resonate with that negative type of energy. Then there are those who are what I call the lost tribe of the tree of life. They worship or emulate or resonate with those steadfast, solid, straight lines, the straight and narrow beams, the arrows and pillars and poles and staves that shoot up out of the earth, right? That may take human form and fluctuate or whatever. Why? Because those are positive. They're literally flooding the world with positive energy. And so some people, you know, they vibe with the evil or the negative that comes down from above. Some people vibe with the positive that comes up from within the earth. In the Mouth of Madness, great movie, great horror flick, really strange. This guy plays a good bad guy. I mean, in like every movie that he's a bad guy in. But anyways, he pretty much goes crazy. He starts drawing all these crosses and X's and stuff. The X marks the spot. The spot is that lake in the middle that I showed you on that map, and it's cross-sectioned by 4 rivers. X marks the spot. When you know about these symbols and the symbolism, and you're like the only one on earth that has this information and can see these things, it can kind of drive a person crazy. And that's basically what happens in this movie. He's locked up in a padded room, drawing all these strange symbols on the wall. This also, same thing happened in Dark City, now that I think about it, right? There was the alleged serial killer that would draw spirals on his victim's chest, and and then there was a detective that was looking for that serial killer. He drew spirals all over his office and stuff, and the spiral symbolism is whenever the hole in the firmament or the sky breaks open, or there's a hole that appears, and all the plasma swirling around at first because of the winds, right? You're like taking the plug out of the bathtub. All the winds are swirling around, so the plasma is going to swirl around at first too. So the plasma will come into our world. It will strike people, okay? Those tentacle monsters from beyond, one-eyed tentacle monsters, one-eyed purple people eaters, whatever you want to call them, they're very real, okay? They do exist, and they will attack people. The good news, that's the scary part. And they can petrify people. They can mutate people. And that's what happens in this particular scene. She's actually mutated and blended in with her child that she's holding. And then she turns into like a crazy creature. That's the scary part. So what's the good news? The good news is you can learn how to fight electrical phenomenon. You can learn how to fight plasma and the dragons and the trolls or whatever. If you learn what they really are, you can learn their strengths and their weaknesses. You can learn their strengths to benefit you when you learn how to harness one or capture it and use it to your advantage or benefit, just like you would fire. When you can do that, this is not scary whatsoever. When you can command that, you know what I mean? Like Solomon with his special gadgets that he was given to command the demons to build the temple. These are just a chart of all these different types of ancient ones, right? Most people are familiar with this one, Cthulhu. Now, the only reason that Cthulhu and many other symbolic gods of antiquity have wings, even angels, is not because they actually had wings, okay? If I show you the Aurora Borealis and the plasma doesn't have wings, right? But people would draw wings on these things in antiquity to let you know this is flying around in the sky on its own accord. Not that it actually has wings. It's flying like a bird, right? It's simple symbolism. Oftentimes plasma balls, you'll see a lot of these plasma balls floating around, and they spiral in on themselves like toroidal fields, and they create even smaller toroidal fields within themselves, and it looks like they're full of eyeballs, right? Or Ezekiel's wheels, etc., right? It depends on how you look at it. You could look at that as an angel. That's exactly how the Ophanim, I think they're called in the Bible, are described, like that. Like that weird creature in Big Trouble from Little China with all the eyeballs on it. Similar to that, okay? That's oftentimes one class of angel, all right? But people would rather draw like Caucasian blonde people with big dove wings or whatever. But in reality, they look more like these things. You can paint them evil, you can paint them good. They are what they are, and they don't care how you paint them. Elder gods versus the great old ones. Cthulhu is usually depicted as very, very large. He's seen as the sleeper, just like Shiva. He's waiting, right? He lives in the ocean. He's waiting. He's blocked from this world by water. And one of these days, they say he's dreaming, actually. So he's busy dreaming. And one of these days, he will wake up from that dream and he will make his way into this world again. Now, Cthulhu also spawns off. He has spawned little versions of Cthulhu, which is just the plasma breaking and breaking and breaking as it gets closer and closer to the surface. Now, this is interesting too. See that tree in the middle? That's from the movie The Color Out of Space. You can also see that sort of weird plasma sheath in the sky, right? It's the same plasma sheath that you saw in that movie Annihilation. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that movie, but I also decoded it, so feel free to watch it. But that means they're in Eden or near Eden. They're either just outside of it or they're on the inside. They can see the plasma sheath, right? Which is like a bubble of plasma that goes around the Garden of Eden. And this is the Tree of Life. It shoots straight up. It's just a pillar, but it creates these steps, these plasma instabilities as it rises because it's just a fluid within a fluid. But it's a dense plasma focus that just shoots up into the air. Now, whenever the boundaries that hold in those gases inside the Earth give way during a neutral point of a polarity shift, and the boundaries above give way, that's when otherworldly, often gigantic creatures, monstrous to us today, will come down and will come up, and they will all meet in the middle, and it'll be Ragnarok. And the world will be full of mist and clouds. You won't be able to see, your hand in front of your face. And the glow of a blue light would be inviting because people would go towards those blue lights and flock towards them, those geoplasmas, to benefit from them, basically, and inherit their protection. Also, people have the ability to mutate into even worse things, right? Some mutations probably might not be favorable. I personally have the feeling that this cosmic plasma that comes down works much like Jeff Goldblum's machine in The Fly, where it wants to reorganize the genetic sequence in the best and most efficient possible way. So you can imagine if people are eating a bunch of pork and sea bugs and disgusting diets and stuff, and then their body is electrically amplified to suddenly incorporate all of that strange material into their flesh. You might have dog men, you might have pig people, you might have monkey people, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a de-evolving or whatever for some. This is actually a real person that did exist according to Catholic lore, at the very least. It was a Catholic saint that was a dog person, a giant dog person, a big hairy wild man with a protruding jaw. Insects as well, right? So you're going to see stuff like this, maybe not this exact looking one, but you will see inner earth insects. Whenever their world depressurizes, they're going to have a zephyr or an inner earth wind that blows all those insects, giant insects by the way, up to our world. And this is mentioned in the book of Revelation as well. The dark lights. So don't look into these lights. A lot of people are going to think they're beautiful. Like a lot of people went out to go see the auroras. I swear, if the auroras were right above your head and getting closer and closer, people are going to wait. And they're not going to realize the danger until like they start seeing, bolts break off and explode and people getting hit by them and stuff. Anyways, as a part of this, you'll also see different weird bodies up in the heavens. that people interpret as celestial bodies. This one is from The Mist. So it's sort of gigantism combined with some other things. Oh, that's the contortionist I was talking about. I don't know why the word just came back to me, but the contortionist, right? They do that effect in a lot of scary movies because we don't understand how that works. But to a contortionist, this is nothing. They're not afraid of this chick. You know what I mean? Right? These are some of the Atlantean type people with what I think is probably technology that's misunderstood. Like, you know, same way we put on a snorkel and stuff. They have devices where they can actually breathe underwater and see underwater easier. That's the plasma sheath. That's featured in the movie Annihilation, which wraps around the Garden of Eden. That's also seen as a creature. Okay, this big bubble that's wrapped around the Garden of Eden at the North Pole, people will see that as a heavenly mystical turtle or a blob, you know, just a blob creature or all kinds of things, right? There's also gigantism that affects the insect world, including worms, right? Gigantic worms will actually rise up out of the earth during these times. They're like sandworms, typically called. This is my concept of space. This is from that same Aquila Rift episode in Black Mirror, right? So I think space probably looks closer to this, like a spider web, right? With all the neurons going back and forth in the mind of God. Then big empty nothingness, right? It looks to me more like a vast cave system or something. The fog will roll in. The plasma will come down. It will also amplify people energetically. So if a person on the inside tends to be more angry and, you know, hateful or malevolent, then this is going to amplify that. If a person is more peaceful on the inside and open-minded and loving, it's probably going to amplify that, right? This is called the searing of the conscious, right? A person's conscious becomes seared. It's electrically amplified to a degree where they almost don't have control over it anymore. They almost have no choice in the matter anymore. You know what I mean? To be good or to be evil. And this one kind of has like a lobster claw. I think that's interesting because I believe that I found evidence for giant lobsters and crabs and ocean bugs, basically, having existed during medieval times. That one this rock carving or this rock picture kind of reminded me of that praying mantis that we saw in that movie, right? Just with the big bulging eyes. Other people might see other things. You know, might see female anatomy or big owl eyes or something. Who knows? Here's a really cheesy B-movie version of like the plasma trying to get into your house, and they put light right in the middle for the eye, right? Just a ball of light with plasma strands coming out. Same thing here, right? Plasma balls with the strands coming out as it's moving. You have to imagine these things are animated, but they're sort of frozen in time on these rocks. That was it. That was pretty much the presentation for today. Just some things to consider, right? The strange, the weird, the unknown. The more strange it is, the more interested I am in it personally, because I want to make the connection between the world of the strange and the world of the real, or the modern world, the things we're used to. How can we use what we have learned and our experience on our path today, during these times, to look back into the past and reimagine it instead of projecting the modern world onto the past and saying, that's impossible, that could never happen, that's imaginary, that's not real. Those people were all shamans and witch doctors who were high on drugs and they just drew strange things. Or was the world a strange place? Let me know in the comments what you think. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.